Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and I picked up a book when I was at the NRB, and I started reading it, and I go, oh, this is really interesting. And so today I'm delighted to have with us Dr. Ron Susek. He is the author of this book called The Assyrian Prophecy, A Betrayed and Broken Nations Destined to Rise Anew from the Martyr's Blood. And for those watching on the television, you can go to theassyrianproject.org, and you'll see the landing page there. That's a picture of the landing page. And again, if you're listening on radio, theassyrianproject.org. Check it out. Dr. Susek, good to see you. How are you?
It is wonderful to be with you, Perry. I've heard so much about you. I feel like we're brothers.
Well, we are.
Yes, we are.
Thanks for your time. What made you lead to write this? What led you to write this?
Well, it began nearly 30 years ago, and I didn't, when God's leading you into something, you really don't see it at the time. And I remember some 30 years ago, I was sitting in my study reading the book of Isaiah, and I came across this prophecy that didn't make sense for one reason. It said Assyria, Egypt, and Israel, these three will be worshiping together and a blessing to the earth. Well, what did not make sense to me was that there's no Assyria. They were wiped out in 612 BC. And in my ignorance, I leaned back and I was being facetious. And I said, God, did you make a mistake? And then over the years, it kept coming to me. I didn't seek it. It kept coming to me. And over the years, I began to read and think. And long story short, I spell it out in the book because I want people to realize that I was among the majority of Christians who have walked by this prophecy for many, actually, the church has walked by it now for 2,000 years. Suddenly, it's coming into focus because I think the time has come. But the thing that compelled me to really write this book was in 2014 when ISIS attacked northern Iraq. And I now knew the people of the Assyrians. I had met some of them. I had studied quite a bit about them. I was following them in the news for a number of years, and I knew that they were under the assault of our enemy, the devil. And I remember sitting in my home, Perry, and I would pound the side of the couch saying, God, I cannot just sit here and do nothing. What can I do? And it kept coming back to me of an Assyrian minister named John Bucco, who said to me many years ago, Ron, if you'll write the next book, I'll give you all my research. And so I dove in and did, I don't know how many hundreds and maybe thousands of hours of research, bloodshot eyes, headaches, a lot of prayer, a lot of spiritual warfare. And now the book is here. And it is my prayer, Perry, that God will raise up hundreds of thousands, if not millions of believers around the world who will understand that this is a vital missing part of prophecy that we need to understand if we're going to know where we are today and if we're going to know what action to take.
This is amazing. Ron, on our side of the family, my wife's side of the family, her grandfather escaped. He was an Assyrian, came to America at the age of 14, couldn't speak English, got off the boat. He was a Christian, got on his knees and said, God, help me. And he got up and he spoke perfect English and ended up bringing his family over. So the Assyrian thing has always been an interest, knowing that they didn't have a land, but the people were still there. And for you to discover this is amazing. So walk us through this missing part of this prophecy.
I'm so amazed at what you just said. I'm sitting here stunned. But the Assyrians were by far the greatest empire on earth for 1,000 years. You read about them in the Old Testament. And both the Bible speaks the truth about them. They overstepped the divine boundaries of their purpose, and God brought them down in 612 BC. Then, for a little over half a millennia, they were in different conclaves with little empires, not sovereign anymore, but they never lost their nationhood as a people. And then shortly after the resurrection, and this, Perry, is the history that how I want God's people to discover. This has been robbed from us. And that is that shortly after the resurrection, the Assyrians were the first people group on earth to begin to follow Jesus Christ. Now, I don't believe they ever lost sight of Noah's God. Remember now that the Assyrians are descendants of Noah's grandson, Asher. And I believe they never lost sight of God completely, even though they moved toward paganism. They also were a people who, they were the people who were listened to Jonah. Well, if they had no background whatsoever, they would have never listened to Jonah, his short sermon, and they would have never repented. We also know that most likely the wise men were Assyrians. They were stargazers. They were studying the stars, looking for the Messiah. How did they know about that if they didn't understand something of Noah's God? And then also, there's great evidence that Abraham was Assyrian. So they have this rich, powerful, biblically entwined history. And then shortly after the resurrection, they became believers in Jesus Christ through the preaching of Thomas and Thaddeus and Bartholomew. And they became the greatest evangelistic force on earth. There are no records to match it. They put a Bible in one hand, a loaf of bread in the other, and with bare feet, they started across Asia, and they went from Mesopotamia, northern Iraq, all the way to China. And Marco Polo wrote about seeing them in the high courts of China. Their priests were there, and the Chinese called them the luminous religion. The luminous religion, because they were spreading with what our history books call the Dark Ages, which were not dark at all. They were spreading medicine. They had the first major medical center on earth. They were spreading philosophy, Socrates and Plato and others. And they were preaching the gospel, and they swept about 60 to 80 million people into the body of Christ. That's a history that we have long lost. But when Satan saw that, he rose up and pounded them into the ground, and they became the most martyred church on record.
How then did the Assyrians today get the image that they now have, which is anything but Christian?
Lies, distortions. The evil one is a liar and a murderer, and he has lied about the Assyrians. He has murdered 2/3 of their nation at the end of World War I. But they also are a people that if you only read the Bible in the Old Testament, you can develop perhaps a bad attitude towards them. The Bible is absolutely accurate, 100%. However, they were not barbarous. They were not evil. They were overly disciplining nations. God raised them up to be his rod to discipline disobedient nations. They overstepped that. They were more harsh than God intended, but they were not wild-eyed, murderous people. That's not what history records. And so it's imperative that we begin to study the rich history of these people, who they were through the New Testament era, and who they are today. And Perry, today, I have never met more wonderful people. They are brilliant. I mean, amazingly brilliant. They are capable. And they have said to me more than once, Dr. Ron, please, we don't want anyone to build our nation for us. All we need is one word alone: protection. Just give us the protection we have not had for 2,000 years. Just give us the protection. We will build the nation. And Perry, when they build a nation, that will be the most brilliant and bright and hopeful thing that will strike the Middle East since the founding of Israel in 1948. And can you imagine, Perry, the marvel of Israel having a trustworthy friend 500 miles from Jerusalem?
Wow. This is certainly outside the box of a lot of today's eschatology, as you well know, Dr. Ron. And yet it fits so well because the Assyrians are kind of lost out there. But if they come back, like you're saying, and the prophecy is there, that's a wonderful thing yet to take place. Where do you think that fits today, as most prophecies don't even recognize this?
Oh, Perry, Thank you, thank you, thank you for asking that question. Number one, this prophecy, the actual completeness of it, will take place in the millennial reign of Jesus Christ. But that doesn't negate that we can begin now. God began with the Jews in 1948. He drew them home, and yet the millennial reign is not here yet. And Noah did not begin, or rather, yeah, Noah did not begin to build the ark the night before the storm. We Westerners tend to think Friday night this ends, Saturday morning that begins. God normally works in process. And there's no reason, I cannot find one reason why we should not begin to rally behind and support and help the nation of Assyria now, getting them ready. They are going to be the most fiery witness you can imagine. In fact, a friend of mine, a theologian friend of mine, said they are the bookends of the church age. They were the great trumpet of the gospel when the gospel was launched. And for a number of centuries, they were the voice of the gospel all across Asia. They were driven into the ground. Now God is going to raise them up, not to boast about their Old Testament history, but to be what they are today. They are God's people. They have become followers of Jesus Christ, and they are representing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And can you imagine, Terry, think about this. Think about the world when this begins to happen, and I believe it can happen in your lifetime and mine, and I don't find a reason why it shouldn't. But every news media on earth is going to rush to the Middle East to find out what in the world is going on. And I can see my Assyrian friends, Father George Betrasho and Father Tuma, and all the many wonderful bishops and priests that I've met in their great movement. I can see them coming before the cameras and saying, this is because of the cross of Jesus Christ. We are followers of Christ.
Wow, how encouraging. Geographically, where does this occur, Ron?
Northern Iraq, Mesopotamia is their historic homeland. They've been there for 4,000 years. The Iraqi constitution recognizes they are the indigenous people of the land. And there they are in northern Iraq. And by the way, Mesopotamia is a big word, but it simply means land between the rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. And so they were in the region of the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, part of their land actually extends into parts of eastern Turkey and western Syria. However, after World War I, all the lines were changed by man, not by God. But eventually, they will have that entire region for their original homestead.
Kurds play a part in this?
Sorry?
Does the Kurds play a part in this?
I want to be very careful, but right now, the Kurds are doing a very difficult thing against the Assyrians. There are still 250,000 of them in northern Iraq, and there are some 3 million scattered around the world. And the Kurds, actually, I've got to be very blunt. They are not, let me put it this way, they are not friends of the Assyrians. They are stealing their lands and their homes and making life extremely difficult.
Okay, I'll leave it at that because I realize.
But let me say something quickly, Perry. God loves the Kurds. He loves every nation of the world. He loves all the people. So if the Kurds will simply obey God, and if we can see Assyria return home, I am here to tell you there is not a nation on earth that's not going to be blessed, including the Kurds, by the Assyrians, the Egyptians, and the Jews.
Look, we can't do this in one segment. I got to get you back. I got to tell our viewers and listeners, check out the book. It's called The Assyrian Prophecy. There's a picture of the cover of the book there by Dr. Ron Susek. Check it out at the bookstore. Well, it's not the bookstore. It's online now at Amazon. You can probably get it there. And start reading.
Perry, if I could interrupt you.
Sure.
Right now, because of the virus crisis, Amazon has partnered with us, but they're not selling any books now apart from emergency books for the virus.
Okay.
So they must go to
the website,
theassyrianproject.com.
All right, assyrianproject.com or .org?
I'm sorry, .org.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
assyrianproject.org. All right, one last question. How does America recognize this nation coming back into existence? Any idea how we embrace this?
Oh my, Harry, America. I see America and our president has possibly the Cyrus of the movement. You recall how Cyrus moved the Jews back into their land. It may have been the largest cash gift of history. They gave them military protection while they rebuilt their walls and their temple and were restored as a nation. And in the next segment, bring me back to this. I want to tell you how the decisions of Cyrus impacted our Constitution today. I know we don't have time now, but let me say that America, there's nothing America could dream of more than the value of having not only Israel as a Judeo-Christian, more a Judeo because we are built on Judaism, and we have the same philosophy and we have the same belief systems because we are built on their belief system. For America and Israel now to have a co-equal partner 500 miles from Jerusalem, that would be a gift to the world right now, even before the millennial reign.
Absolutely amazing. All right, check it out, The Assyrian Prophecy. Probably go to Dr. Ron's website, theassyrianproject.org. Hey, we'll get you back. Thank you, my friend. God bless you for your work.
Bless you. Thanks. Thank you.